Hello, everyone. My name is Rogue Doug. I'm a former VR esports player. Today, I thought I would talk a little bit about room clearing, something more interesting than aim, finally, because I'm not really playing other VR games and I don't have a whole lot else to actually do right now outside of real life stuff, so figured I'd finally get over this portion of my notes. Room clearing, I have my own way of doing it. This video is going to reflect that. It's not quite what you'd see in real life, and that mainly is because in real life, it has to be a lot more dynamic. So a lot of people they train these ways, these priority systems going from top to bottom about where danger comes from and how to treat different room sizes and where each guy in like a stat goes, for example. We're playing video games, so I'm not necessarily gonna have two or three buddies, uh, somewhere between one or three teammates necessarily standing behind me. This is something I might have to do on my own. So I usually plan for it starting from the idea that I would have to do it by myself. And then the second thing is that I'm not necessarily, I'm not doing dynamic. I'm not clearing rooms that I don't understand. The vast majority of the time, I'm clearing rooms and maps that I'm already very familiar with. So when we plan it, when we understand what we want from it, we can actually begin learning from the point of view that we are clearing rooms that we're already somewhat familiar with. And that's actually a decent way to learn because if you understand why you're clearing rooms the way you do, eventually you can start applying that to room types that you don't already understand and it becomes a lot easier. But so I have drawn out a room, and this is kinda like one of the rooms in Breachers. The proportions are a little bit different, but I kind of like this room shape because it's terrible. It is super annoying and it's just inconvenient. For our purposes, these lines are walls or just things that block lines of sight, and then these little indents are just going to be our doorways. So you got doorway here, doorway up there. And we're going to pretend we're coming in from this way, and we want to, I don't know, go towards the back of the room over here or clear this way. So our line of travel, our intended line of travel, would be here, here, and that way. So, with that in mind, there are two main phases that I like to plan for as far as planning to clear these rooms. The first are the angles that you are exposed to when you are initially entering the room. And then the second is as you're going along the pathway, going wherever it is you need to go, what angles you're exposed to while doing that. So it kind of helps if I'm going to use blue for just potential enemy players. What sort of places that people like to hide? That's not blue. Give me blue. And the obvious answer, I'm going to use blue for enemy because blue is very clearly an enemy color. In this example, this looks like a straight line, so someone could be here and back here. It's the same angle functionally. They like to hide in corners. They like to hide in doorways. They like to hide way back from corners sometimes, so someone might be all the way back here and just staring this way, especially if there's some cover. And they'll sort of hang out alongside cover as well. Ignore the shapes. When we're planning for this, in theory, and one of the things I don't like is that there's a lot of talk about pieing rooms. Whereas if I'm standing here and some people will teach no matter what, you pie the room every single time. It's really great for dynamic when I'm trying to learn the layout of a room really quickly and I'm establishing dead zones, which are, imagine if I was walking and I was pieing this room, pieing this doorway, what zones would I not be able to see? And one of the most obvious is usually the shallow corner. So if I were to pie the room, I might in theory just not be able to see anything in this corner. This would be a dead zone. In truth, even if we already know the room layout, that's going to be the majority of this room showing up. Like someone could actually be staying in the middle there. But as a player, we know what people are likely to hide and where people like to play based on what's strong, especially if they're already familiar with it. That's kind of the idea of where this intersects with competitive gameplay. So we can eliminate a lot of like worse angles that people might potentially be hiding in. As a result of that, I don't like I like to pie, especially if it's a big open room like this, but you don't necessarily need to rely on it contextually. So our two steps for planning this is what angles you're exposed to in what orders, and then what angles you're exposed to if there's a lot going on at the same time, which for this one we're going to see here somewhere. So in order, Around here, we're going to start seeing the doorway. When we're roughly in line with this, looks like we're going to have one long sight line going alongside this cover all the way to the back of the room. If we were to J-hook in, or pie, it would be this, and then entering the room into our dead zone that we would be unable to clear. Coming up, this one's a little bit tricky. It could either be this guy from all the way back here, and then this guy, and then you obviously have the back doorway, and then you have this final corner, which I actually didn't even draw, but it is a corner. People like hiding in them. Some of you might already start by getting an idea of what our room clearing is going to start looking like. Essentially, as we're walking through this room, these red lines where people might be hiding are where we're pointing our weapon or we're looking. Your default should generally be having your weapon up and at the ready, kind of head height, chest height, whatever it is to kill something. The only exception to that would be in games where you can, where sprinting, like getting the extra movement speed to just get out of this zone as fast as possible, is worth loss in accuracy from keeping your weapon down and flicking up when you see somebody. That's very situational, but I think it kind of helps. It helps me at least if I start thinking about getting my sights on target first and then movement secondary, unless I have a really good reason to do otherwise. So, with that in mind, let's think about this the way we would run it. We're walking up, we want to clear this. We can actually treat this as a pie if we would like to. It looks like in this situation it would be beneficial given that, make this red again, given that we, and in the game there's a wall here, but in this situation we don't have it. So we could just treat this entire thing as a pie, and if we were pieing, we would be looking this direction. We wouldn't necessarily clear this guy, but we would be looking on the inside track, the shallow. And so we can start numbering these. This is our first line of sight. When we're at this point, we pie through the room, clear the second, clear the third, clear the fourth. Our dead zone, fifth, we walk up. Second shallow, 6. We got 7, doorway, 8, final 9. And this becomes our default for this floor plan. We know how the room works. We know it's a very common room. You don't actually have to draw it out every time, but as long as you understand how it works, about how you clear your priority spots, your hot spots, however it is you want to say them, in order, you're fine. So in practice, you'll see people just waltz in, and they don't really have a plan for any of this ickiness. That's where you kind of start seeing issues. You start seeing inconsistency, because it's like, oh, I'm going to clear this every time, but I'm basically just going to ignore these two. Even if they're less common spots, people are sometimes there. But what if we weren't able to do the pie? So we're not able to do this route, and we actually do have to J-hook in. The best answer I have to give for that is utility. And for our cases for this, frags, flashes, smoke grenades. The most useful is probably going to be frags for most things. I'll start explaining. But for our purposes, room clearing, frag grenades, even though they're called defense grenades, we're going to use them to clear out these corners. The entire purpose of frag grenades when we're room clearing is to get rid of some of these angles. So if I say it's like, oh, I just despise 3 and 4. So 3 up here, 4 down here. And I just don't, or 5 as well, I guess, but 3, 5, I just don't want to deal with these two. I know if I walk in and I'm looking left, this guy could pop out and kill him, and he probably is. It's a very common thing. Maybe he listens to footsteps here and then pops out as soon as he hears you walk in the room, or like a sensor goes off that tells him where you are or something. So clearing these two with my gun, huge liability. Frag grenade. It's VR. I could just throw a frag grenade to the back corner of this room without ever actually going into the room. You just hook it around with your arm. They're not gonna they are not gonna shoot you before you throw that frag grenade. And that has kind of two purposes. First, that's there, and if they can't move, it just kills them outright. Second, let's say you're really good aim and you throw it into the center here, people are going to want to move. They'll either shove themselves into the corners more or try and run past the frag grenade. So if I'm moving and I'm clearing whatever, I already cleared this site and I move to 2 and 3, I can just sit here, throw the frag grenade, and literally just watch this angle for a second, assuming I already cleared this long guy. And if nobody comes running and it doesn't hit anybody, that angle is clear. When I go out into the room, I don't have to clear that now because I did that with the frag grenade. So it's a really fantastic tool for getting rid of some of this extra ickiness, all these converging sightlines, if you're trying to work by yourself. Flashbangs kind of do the same thing, but whereas frags will clear out the angle for you without you actually having to do anything extra, flashbangs you do still have to deal with the sightlines yourself. You can't just throw a flashbang and walk away, or just walk past it. You're still going to be checking, the entire like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you will have a little bit of buffer time while the person's blind and probably just blind firing this entire area, so you could just move past it and, in theory, clear them. In practice, I usually don't use flashbangs because good players will just aim at head height or chest height and kill you as you walk in, or they'll just use the sound cues as hit markers to kill you through the flashbang. But it's something you could do. And the same deal with smoke grenades. You can literally throw a smoke grenade in the back of the room or have it block a sightline or something. It lets you get away with not immediately having to deal with the sightline, but it doesn't get rid of the threat in the same way that the smokes do. So if there's someone that's in the corner and you throw a smoke in front of them, there's still a threat there. It's just delayed by a little bit. It's kind of up to you to decide whether you want to deal with it there or not. I would say smokes are probably a little bit more useful than flashbangs. But that is very much game dependent, and I would take either over just walking around this corner like a doofus any day of the week. So that's kind of about it. When I talked about this before, I shot another video, and in that case I drew like another random room, and we walked through it, drawing this exact same thing. But in truth, if you understand why we're choosing these sightlines the way we are, and the fact that you just have to clear these as you are like under threat to them, and how to use utility to get rid of sightlines or negate them or make them easier to deal with, especially in this area right here, you're probably fine. If you could do this, you could do pretty much any room that you're ever going to find. So I hope that this drawing was somewhat helpful to some people. If it wasn't, let me know, and I'll try and do it better or add more information that'll help people understand whatever it is I'm failing. I know I didn't talk about things like dead zones or center fed rooms or corner fed rooms in any length, but I don't think that's super useful when you're not dealing with dynamic clearing. This is just for clearing what you already know. So, in any case, thank you for watching. I'll see you all around.